right. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Let me pull up my comments here. All right. So, welcome to the second episode of Live from Ohio. It's Saturday Chat Live. And I'll keep making that mistake if I say Saturday, but it's Saturday Chat Live. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to do a few odds and ends, some news and announcements, and then we'll bring on our two guests today who will talk about their journey in data science, their careers, things they've learned along the way, things they might do differently, what a day in the life is like for them. And we'll just get a conversation going. And you can, at the end, ask them questions. So while we wait maybe for a few more people to get into the stream here, I'm going to have a few news and announcements for you. So number one is that next week is Memorial Day here in the United States. So I will probably be just by myself because I don't want to bother anybody on Memorial Day. It's a time, obviously, we reflect here in the U.S., but it's also a time when a lot of people go, with family and friends and do cookouts and just try to relax over the weekend. So I'll probably just be here by myself. Maybe I'll find some poor soul who wants to come into the chat with me. So we'll see next week what we do, but it probably will be just me. Number two, on the news and announcements, I will be dropping a new video on YouTube on Monday. It's on best subsets regression. It's pretty short, high level, just conceptual overview of what best subsets regression is about. And that will complete the series of forward, backward, stepwise in best subsets. And then we'll get into more complex criteria after that. So there will be a new video on Monday. So I encourage you to check that out. Third thing before we get to our guests is that in 2 weeks, on June 5th, that's 2 weeks, I believe, this will be a special live stream, and it is going to be titled Belonging in Statistics, and that will be with a professor at UCLA, Mike Sang, and he has an initiative at UCLA that is designed to get people from more diverse backgrounds and experiences into statistics and STEM. So what we're going to do is, it's going to be a longer live stream, but we're going to try to cycle in different guests like every 20, 30 minutes and have the panelists change and talk about trying to, increase the different types of people that go into statistics and STEM. So that will be sort of a larger event here in a couple weeks. So that's what we'll be doing in the next couple of weeks here on this show. And of course, this show is evolving. This is only episode number 2. So we will keep working on the process. I'll try to reach out to more guests that I think could benefit you, and we'll have them on as time goes on. Last thing I'll say is that this is the first time I'm using StreamYard in a stream. So if I click something and something weird happens, that's just me learning how this sort of works. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our two guests, and I will have them just introduce themselves. So let's do this. All right, there they are. You all can unmute now that I've talked too much. So everybody in the stream, please welcome our guests, Larry and Mark.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
So glad that they came on the show. And I have, in the virtual world, people, but it's came through YouTube and LinkedIn and stuff like that, and they're very active on there, and they've been great, commenting and following what they do on there, and they come from different sort of paths into data science. Now, I will say I'm going to use the term data science during this stream as sort of an overall umbrella term, even though I know there are many nuances in the namings and people do different things and stuff like that. So we're just going to use the term data science for our purposes. So Larry has decided to be the sacrificial person to go first. And so what I want to do is make sure that the viewers are benefiting from this. So the first thing each of our guests is going to do is talk about, a little about their current role, what they do, what a day in the life is like for them, some challenges they face. Then we'll go from there. And the format will be, we're going to have a conversation for maybe 30 minutes, and then we're going to take all your questions from the chat, and you can ask either one of them about what they do and how they do it. So we'll try to keep that within an hour. So, all right, Larry, tell us about what you do, what a day in the life is like for you, and some challenges
Absolutely.
you face.
Thank you, Brandon, for having me on the show. A day in a life for me, I'm going to say, is a little more unorthodox than most people, I would just assume. Work for myself. Actually, I work for my wife. She's kind of the boss. She tells me what to do. It's been like that for the last 7 years. Backgrounds in e-commerce. And that's where most of my passion came from for data science term. We'll go with that term. Yeah, data science. And what I do is currently we are switching from more to more consulting from e-commerce stuff. So we help people find ways to save time and save money using data. And let's go into what I do. What I do usually, a day in a life for somebody who has 5 kids and lives abroad. We get up early. We take our kids to school. We have to walk to school. We're in Spain. So we walk to school, and then we come back, and I got maybe about 4 hours before I have to go get them. And in that 4 hours, I do as much work as I can, cleaning up data. That's usually the data cleaning time, or finding new ways to get clients. But most of it's spent cleaning data. And then I go get my kids, and then I come back, get them a snack, try to keep my son awake. He's 4. So we try to keep him awake so he can get to dinner time. And right before, say, probably 7 o'clock my time, I go straight into building models that I need for the next day or for the week, and use those and get them ready, kind of do my analysis at that time. And then 9 o'clock comes around, we eat dinner, put the kids to bed, and then I'm in bed. And it's a repeat the next day, except for Fridays, they get a half day. So we spend about 2 hours in the afternoon going to the playground, and me usually on my phone talking on LinkedIn. That's usually what my day in the life is like.
So what's a typical problem that a client might come to you looking to solve?
The typical problem that I get right now is more, which is kind of my passion, is more of the data visualization. So currently right now, there's 2 clients I'm working with that are in the insurance industry, and I don't know what it is about the finance industry, but they love tables. They love seeing every single number, even if it has no concept of being on the table or being a KPI. They just have to see it. So most of it right now is trying to teach them that they don't really need to see that number because it's not really that important, and we need to free up space on this big table so it can fit on a slide. So that's usually what it goes into. A lot of data cleaning and making it look pretty is where I'm currently at right now.
So you think there's I'm going to let Mark here speak in a moment, but data visualization is taking such a prominent role in the way businesses present information. Are you seeing that in your work?
Yeah, in my work, exactly, yes. It's one thing to build a model. Everybody's like, I want this model. But if I build the model and run an regression analysis, say, for instance, to forecast sales or something, I can send them a spreadsheet, but it means nothing to them. So I have to present it to them in a way that they understand. So, and sending it as a table does work, but I find it more effective if I use certain charts. My go-to is like the line chart and the bar chart. And sadly, yes, I do use a pie chart, but I make it a donut chart. So I don't know if that really counts as a, but I've recently got some of the clients to go, instead of doing like a pie chart, I'll do like a stacked bar chart. So it fills it up and then they can see it breaking down. So I usually get away with a lot of those, but they really want to see a lot of data summed up, and they're starting to see the benefits of learning how to use data visualization properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see the same thing. It's really taking on a life of its own. So,
Oh, I love it.
yeah, Mark, same basic questions. Tell us a little about what your current role is, what a day in the life might be for you, what sort of problems you might solve for people, maybe some challenges you have.
Definitely. So I'm a data scientist at Humu. I specifically work on the product side. And so I have a really interesting kind of role. Really happy to be here. Psychologists who stand kind of IO psychology, the psychology of the workplace, who build these really great interventions or do these analyses. And then we have our engineers who are building the product. And so as the data scientist, I sit in between that where I help translate the statistics and the research design into product. Sometimes, a lot of our stuff's in R code and I have to translate it to Python code. And so it's been a really great growth opportunity for me because I've been more on the analytic side where doing these analyses, but now when I have to from a data problem to a feature building problem, it's a definitely different set, especially being at a startup. We've been around for 4 years, 80 people, and we're building features as fast as we can go to figure out product market. What do our customers like, dislike, and is really putting it out there. So to kind of take a step back, probably be helpful to understand what Whom is. We're an action management platform to help companies really provide tools to push specific behaviors or culture change in a large organization. And so typically in organizations, you might have like a 6-month or 12-month survey. HR sends it out. We get to do this analysis and like, all right, here's the changes we're going to make. For our product instead, it's a real-time action, meeting people where they're at, where we use these things, nudges, which are small little behavior changes to push people towards action sent over a course of like 6 months per session. And so it's a really cool data problem because you're trying to figure out, using science-backed kind of knowledge from the psychologists, but what's the right nudge at the right time? Things meaningful. And then when we collect all our data, send it back to the HR executives in a really meaningful way. It's the data story. Was there a change? How does that change? So it's a blending of business, psychology, data storytelling, to wear a lot in my role. And so a typical day for me is, I'll wake up, walk my dog, and then because we're all work from home, I typically around 9 a.m. have some like team meetings, and then
Oh, did we lose Mark?
Oh.
Hey, Mark, we're having a little difficulty. You're cutting in and out and have sort of those weird pangy sounds. At least that's what I'm hearing. So maybe see
Okay.
if it comes in and out.
Let's see.
It comes in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it kind of comes in and out. But I'm just kind of letting you know. Maybe there's something, something running.
That sounds great. Let me just switch out my headphones.
Okay.
And maybe that might work.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
We'll go back. We'll go back to Larry.
One moment.
We can go back to Larry and have you. We'll have you come back because Larry hates talking. So we'll let Larry have a moment here. So
well, it's good to know that I'm not the only one having technical issues.
So yeah, Mark will be right back for everybody. So there's a lot of individuals out there that watch sort of my channel, and a lot of us follow us on LinkedIn and vice versa. And one question that we always get asked is what pushed us into some sort of career working with data. So I know I'm going to ruin it, but Mark comes from like a community health background somewhat that I was able to read, and Larry, you were in the military for a while. So very different sort of perspectives. What was that sort of moment where you just were like, I kind of want to go in this direction and be a data scientist or, work with data or solve data problems, Larry?
My first one was once I got out of the military, working for myself, because I did not like those 20-hour day. Well, I do now that I'm out of it. I have good times about them, but I do not enjoy the 20-hour days and the long weeks and the deployments away from family. So I wanted to work for myself. We started the business, and doing the business, you find out how fast money goes. So I had to find a way to save money and took a class on decision-making science in my bachelor's degree program, and it like opened my eyes. Oh, a regression? I can predict the future? What is this? It was like, oh, okay, I'm going to apply this the next day. And ever since then, I was like, what can I apply to this regression model? What can I do this to? What can I do that to? And then you learn more about logistic regression. And then I got into the stats of stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the magic sauce right here to run a business without going broke. So I got more into it, and then I found out I really did enjoy it.
So really just like, looking at data allows me to do something that I didn't really know how to do before. Or like in your case, like with regression, very basic statistical technique, you can make really good predictions, within certain boundaries. It's almost like an insight into the future. And it's like, that's kind of like how I got interested in it. I'm like, wait a minute, I can put like a number in for X and it gives me a Y.
Yeah. And then you're like, I can tell the future.
That simple.
I'm like a magician when it comes to these numbers now. I'm going to be able to tell the future.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I told my wife when I first figured it out. She thought I was a dork, but it worked.
It seems so innocuous. It seems like so innocuous and easy, but I'm like, wait a minute. I learned this linear equation in like 8th grade or 9th grade, right? When I had algebra. Now it's the same thing in like my introductory graduate stats class. It's the same thing, but now I can use it to make some sort of prediction. Like, I think that was cool, so that's kind of the way I got into it, as well. And then Mark, what was your sort of background into getting in to data science fields? We don't start out usually as 4th graders, thinking about data and stuff like that. Some do, but most of us don't. So what was your sort of glide path into a data career, or at least an interest in it, and why?
Can you hear me better now? Is these better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. These are the non-pro versions of the AirPods, which is interesting. Shout out Apple for that one. So for me, I was not planning on being a data scientist at all. I was actually trying to be a doctor. And so I was pre-med since community college through university. And then finally, I was doing my master's program at Stanford Med, where I was studying community health prevention research. And, I was specifically doing that master's to make me more competitive to go into medical school. And being there, I was cross-tested medical school classes, and I did not like grad school at all. It was grad school. It was amazing. The program is really great. I'm really appreciative for it. But I knew right then and there 4 more years of this would not fit well for me. And I just couldn't see myself being in academia anymore. And so I basically reshifted my whole identity of being a doctor and all my mentors and everything. I'm like, what do I do with this skill set? From my master's program, I had these stat skills, these research design skills. And then being at Stanford, I was really around a lot of startups and really interested in entrepreneurship and like how you can do social impact through that. And so data science was kind of like the way in for me, and it just seemed like an obvious choice. And the more I learned about it, the more I got obsessed with it. And it really shined when I started learning stats. It didn't come easy to me at first. I was spending like 20 hours outside of grad school just learning how to code in R and do stats. One, I needed it because I wanted to pass my classes, but like I fell in love with it and I couldn't stop learning about it. And so that's how I kind of stumbled into it. And then after grad school, it wasn't like, all right, I'm gonna go straight into data science. It took a couple of years to really build up the skills to kind of get into my first role.
Yeah, it's just so interesting how people just find that sort of niche. So I'm gonna stick with you, Mark, if you don't mind, because since we're on this sort of topic, you talked about your struggle with statistics, and I think a lot of people have something similar along those lines. Um, and were there any other, and of course, academia itself is a lumbering bureaucracy that is just ginormous. So you kind of talked about that, but what are one or two things maybe you did learn in your educational experiences? It could be a class, could be a project, whatever it might have been, um, that you were able to take, forward into your data science career at Humu, that you could tie back to some sort of educational experience you had at some level of college.
Definitely. I think the biggest thing I draw on is research design. And that's what I really learned in undergrad at a beginning level I studied sociology. But really thinking about like clinical trials, this causal inference. You do this action, you do this intervention. What's this change, and how strong was that change, right? You can't just do that with data. Something my professor used to say as a joke is that if you have to do statistics, someone messed up on research design. And it's pretty true, because like if you have a really solid research design, you can probably just do like a t-test and it'll be great, or do a regression. But if something doesn't match up, where you have two different populations and you didn't design it correctly, you have to do more advanced methods. My favorite one's propensity score matching. I'm a huge nerd over that. But I think that was the biggest thing, and that really, statistics didn't make sense to me until I learned research design, because then it gave me the why and the reason how, and like understanding populations. And so now my current job at Humu, it gives me that data skepticism. It makes me question, how did we capture our data? How do we set up these two different populations? What's our true research question that we're asking? And so I root my data science practice and kind of like trying to drive business decisions with this research design framework.
That's really interesting. It's interesting you say that the statistics made sense once you understood the research design. And I've never really thought about it that way, but that does make a whole lot of sense. We tend to teach statistics more as a math class and not as, this is a tool to use for a research purpose to answer some sort of question, and I think that's really insightful. Larry, what is anything that you can think of from your educational experience that you've been able to pull forward, in your work, even in your entrepreneurial type stuff you've done, that you can tie back to your schooling?
Pretty much everything I do goes back to my schooling. Yeah, pretty much everything. So I do a lot of going to class. We had intros to stats and then decision-making science. And then I got into my master's degree program and had a great mentor, Dr. Mattia, Angela Mattia. And she got me hooked on kind of like R and how to use it to solve problems. And then I don't remember my professor's name, but then he taught me about setting up, as Mark was saying, like setting up your problem, how to set it up. And that's when it was like, boom, that's what stats is for. That's what I'm trying to do. I need to make sure I got everything right, set my experiment up correctly. And that's when I was like, it was a game changer, like for marketing, for design, for user interface experience that we had, for product development. That sets a big precedence on what we do. Pretty much anytime we make a decision is framing out the problem and doing the analysis on it to see the outcome of it.
Now, is there anything, stick with you, Larry, that if you could go back and maybe do a bit differently, or something you might, maybe a class you wish you would have taken, or an experience you wish you would have done, or a skill you wish you would have learned that was available at that time? That's the thing. In 12 months, something new will be out. So there's no way to really know. But at that time, was there something you might have done differently that you think might have prepared you better for now?
Yeah, I have a big regret. Our community is probably going to be mad at me for this one, but I originally started in Python and thought R was kind of lame. And one of my professors made us take it, and I was hesitant on it. And then once I figured out how easy it was to work in R, I just never really went back to Python. I'm like, boom, set. This, everybody uses R. This is what it's going to be. And then now I see everything's like, oh, you need to have Python. We use Python. We don't use R. We use Python. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have stayed with that a little bit longer.
So that was actually a question someone had in the chat, and when we go to like answering viewer questions, we will actually go into that. But yeah, it's the thing with I'm not a programmer by disposition, even though I was coding BASIC. That tells you how old I am, by the way. From like I was in like elementary school. I just never really took to it. Like it wasn't. I do it, and I like doing it sometimes, but it's not me. And there's so many out there that's really hard to even know which one. And we will we'll get into that sort of, because a couple of people actually have that question in the chat. So, you know, Mark, is there anything that you might do differently, or something you might learn, or an opportunity you might have go back and take if you could?
I think the biggest lesson I probably should have did for younger Mark was be more patient. Because I grind it hard. I grind it really hard, like working 80 hours. I had 2 jobs, you know, a second one to get more analytics experience. And now that I'm in my current role, and this is the first time in a while where I haven't had like another job or doing some other big side project, I've now realized that I'm working less and doing more because I'm not so burnt out. And so I think older me will go back in time and be like, hey, chill out. You don't need to grind all the time. Like, it will happen eventually. And if anything, you'll enjoy the process a lot more if you just stick to a balanced schedule and not try to cram everything as quickly as possible. It's starting to become really clear to me, especially when you're in data science. These are really complex problems, whether it's coding, statistics. You can only put so much brain power into it. And having that fresh mind to tackle problems, I'm starting to realize is so important. And now I'm figuring out how to prioritize that, so I can give better quality work than just quantity of work.
Yeah, it's someone messaged me on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. I could go find it, and they were kind of, and some of their questions are coming up in the chat. It was like, how should I approach learning this stuff? And the advice I gave this individual was set aside, like every week, a learning budget, like 10 hours or 8 hours, whatever it is. And then my opinion was to divide it up into quarters, like fourths, and like spend a fourth of that time maybe doing your coding practice and coding skills. Spend a quarter of that time just reading general, like just general content knowledge, or general domain knowledge, like, or an autobiography or a history or a current events book that has nothing to do with like coding and stuff like that. You know, read a business book to get a feel, if that's what your field is, or read a medical book, whatever your field is, to get that broader sort of perspective, you know. And then spend some of that time just doing nothing but thinking about it. Just go for a walk, sit on the bench, sit in your whatever, sit somewhere and just let it all stew, and start making connections. Like, this is connected to this, this is connected to this, this is connected to this. And that's how you get that broader, deeper sort of understanding without burning yourself out, because people will completely burn themselves out, you know? So yeah, it's interesting you say, like, maybe just not run myself into the ground. Or it's true too, if when you do that, you run the risk of resenting what you do, right? You know, it's just like you start hating what you do because it takes away from everything else you have to do. So, or you want to do. It's about balance, you know. So on that sort of note, on this learning note, what are 2 or 3 things or resources, or, you know, what do you do to keep current? Like, how do you, everything changes so fast. There's always just something new, something new, something new. I work in publishing, and we never know what to put like in a book or whatever, because in 6 months it's going to be different. So Larry, what do you do to keep up to speed in a field where everything changes so fast?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I absorb content. The best way to explain it is I absorb content in any way I can because my time is very limited. So, for instance, I listen to a lot of podcasts when I go running or exercise. I'll put on uh, linear digressions, analytics on fire, stuff like that to keep current, to learn what people are using. For well, currently I'm like brushing up on my SQL kind of skills, which are a little rusty, but so currently I'm trying to build my own database on my computer with random facts to keep those fresh and trying out new things. But yeah, that's mostly how to absorb content without really having to absorb it in a long period of time is, I guess, the best way I could say it, like the podcast or videos or something like that.
And do you take any courses like some code camps or Udemy or there's a bazillion of them now, but do you keep sort of the chops by going and doing stuff like that at all?
Okay, I did do data camp for about a year, crushed it on that one, and I found that it was still putting me in the same kind of position. I'm still not solving the problems I needed, but I learned these new skill sets that I'm not really learning how or using at the time. So I had to change my dynamic, and I usually do look for instance, I have a problem currently trying to work with an imbalance on a customer current churn rate. So I am trying to find a way to fix that imbalance, and that's where I focus my coding on, is like, how do I solve the current problem I'm on, and how can I use this later on? So usually it's go straight to YouTube and I'll watch a video on it and do the walkthrough on it. Because I find that doing those courses like Data Quest, I did that for a while in Data Camp, it wasn't solving the current problem I was on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a side question we could go down if we had enough time. What in a utopia, how will we change, how we teach and train people who want to become data scientists or machine learning engineers or whatever else it is? How might we, what changes will we want to make? Sorry, a lot of W's. I have problems with W's. In the educational space, because there's so much. I mean, there's tons and tons, which is, in a way it's good, but in a way it's a challenge, So Mark, same question, how do you keep up to date on what's going on, keep your chops, with all the new technologies and language, the languages themselves change, the tools change, the titles we give things change. Like Larry's right. Larry's right.
The title's the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, well, welcome to academia, by the way. Something, colon, something, comma, something, comma, and something. That's the way you write everything. But like in the past few months, I have seen two trends, and I think you all probably agree. SQL is like back
with vengeance.
It never really went away, but SQL is back with a vengeance. And then we have like ML ops. That's really big, So these things change every few months. So Mark, what do you do to keep up to speed with what's going on, your own skills, and just staying current?
Yeah, there's kind of like layers to it. So LinkedIn is like my main kind of source right now for a high level, and I make sure to follow and prune who I follow, to see like what are they talking about, what are the kind of business problems they're dealing with. So that kind of gives me like a live feed of that. And it's also really helpful to engage with those people and comment on their posts because they'll respond back. You can start building these relationships and learning more about the work in different domains. And then also I have a whole bunch of newsletters that I like that has really great curated information. And so I basically get weekly newsletters from data engineering or data science or ML engineering that will say like, here's these new algorithms, or like, here's how we use this XYZ in production. Another great source to stay up to date is the technical blogs from big FANG companies. So like Netflix or Facebook, or Google, the big tech companies, they're often putting out blogs of like how they do things in production. Those are really great sources because now they're talking about, we've taken this open source technology, either they've created or used from others, and how they set up their system and how it works at scale. That's something that's been really, really helpful for that. And then on the other side is like, how do I stay up to date with like my current skill set? And for me, my learning style, I can't memorize to save my life. I think that's why I like coding a lot, because it's just an open book. I just Google everything. I have the answer. And so, you know, I have a list of resources that I reference now. Brandon, your videos are definitely on that list. StatQuest, you know, and I often, I forget a lot of these things. I just have the foundations down really well. And even so, when I go back to the foundations, I learn something new, which is really exciting. But then when I have to implement something more advanced, I just reference the material and reteach myself again. And so I think the bigger thing is like rather than staying up to date, is more so knowing where to look, having some references, and knowing how to learn and implement really quick. I think that's kind of the key for staying up to date. Is you don't have to have this giant thing of knowledge. You just got to know where to tap into and where to learn it, and then where to implement it.
That's awesome. And I do want to take viewer questions here in a few minutes. So if you're in the chat, if you're still watching, I'm going to go through the chat here in a couple minutes, and we're actually going to put your questions, some of the questions up on the screen for all of us to look at and try to maybe give you some insights. That's why we're here. We're here for you. You know, we're not here for us. We're here for you all that are watching and in the chat. So I want to kind of roll the last couple of questions kind of together. And, well, I'll ask them individually, but they're kind of the same idea. And Mark, I'll come to you first. So where do you, if you're to put on your Nostradamus hat, what do you think might be on the horizon for data science and machine learning? Where do you think we might be going? And in the context of a student now has got to be ready, or at least the ground has to be tilled to grow something that's not going to happen for 3, 4, maybe 5 years. So from what you see maybe in your own experience and what you read in the blogs and you all listen to podcasts, all this other stuff, where do you think we might be going in this field in the next few years? And these are just guesses, we know, but what do you think?
I honestly think it's actually going to be easier for people to apply for data roles. And I'm being very specific in saying data roles and not data scientists. As we all know, data scientist's name is very broad. I don't even know what it means sometimes, and I'm a data scientist. If anything, it's just branding at this point. I'm more so starting to lean towards being a data professional. And that's because I think before, businesses were just throwing data scientists at work. They hired a bunch of data scientists or a data scientist, and they're like, you do everything, we'll figure it out. And no ROI really happened. They just had a whole bunch of Jupyter notebooks and maybe some experiments or models, and nothing really went into production, or it didn't drive business value, or you build a dashboard and nothing really happened to it. And I feel like businesses now are being very intentional, like, what's a data science or data team? So, you know, you're hiring your data engineers, you're hiring your data analysts, you know, you're hiring your data scientists who may be more so on like the research and R&D side. You know, your ML engineers are putting the machine learning in production, ML ops for all the infrastructure, right? And so now we're gonna have these more defined roles where you have the data science lifecycle. One image I really liked on Microsoft's website is the data science lifecycle, where they talk about the different steps to implement data science in business. And so now I think you're going to be seeing more roles where companies actually know what they want and what they, let me phrase that, I think they know what they want, but what they actually need, and create roles specifically for that and develop teams around that. And so I think as a data scientist or future data professional, I think rather than saying like, I want to be a data scientist or I want to be a data engineer, you should more strategically think, what part of the data lifecycle, building a data product or data solution, do I want to fit into for maybe my first role, maybe my second role? And I think that will rather guide you on what skill sets you need to build up on. So for me, like I love data cleaning. Data cleaning is really fun. And so I love data quality. Like it's great. So like I really love the exploration phase and like also like the data engineering stuff. I'm starting to lean more into through my current projects of like thinking about our data warehouse and like how do we organize and structure it to actually drive quick value, right? So that's where I'm more so leaning into right now. But later in my career, I mean, like I actually love building data products and I love putting things in production. And I love the fact that it's machine learning. So I may shift my career towards ML engineering. And so I think in the future, it's going to be easier to make those shifts because I don't have to just be a data scientist and the company try to figure out where to place me.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna open up. You know, it's gonna be much more broader, I think. You know, as well. And yeah, data cleaning. Yeah, I love it too. It's called flash fill. All right, Larry. Larry, what do you think? Where do you think we might be going in the next few years? Of course, incorporate what Mark might said too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to jump on Mark's there. I definitely agree with the data team thing. You'll see it in job postings right now. They're looking for, but for some strange reason, everybody has to put engineer at the end of it. So you'll get as I like to call myself, a data visual engineer. That's the field I enjoy the most. And then you got the data engineer. Then you have the machine learning engineer. And there's a couple more, like a production engineer. I think it's going to be more, or data analyst and engineer, more of a team effort and specializations based off people. They'll still kind of know how the other one works, but I think it's going to be more of a team thing when it comes to data science in the field. I'm just hoping that businesses catch up and understand. My big push is for people to understand data literacy, because a lot of these stakeholders think just because it's data, it gives them a magic answer to what they want or what they believe it said. And sometimes they need some coaching.
Yeah.
I would actually really love to jump on that data literacy component is like, as a data professional, teaching others data literacy is such a huge component of your job.
Yeah.
And also understanding where the company's at in that data literacy kind of life cycle. So at the early stage, they may not even know that data is important. They may not believe it, right? They may have some business assumptions. They're like, we're going to go with that to with the data, right? And then
it's in my gut. I got a gut feeling about this.
Exactly. Then you have people who are like, we need to use data, but we don't have the infrastructure for it. So like, what are the limitations we have for it? And then on the higher end, you're like, we use data, we have the infrastructure, we're putting AI into production, right? And so knowing where your company's at for that will make your life as a data professional much easier, because you can put forth solutions that essentially they're realistic. And also it tells you like who are the key stakeholders you need to teach and bring along to tell them why we need to invest in this infrastructure and why this data provides value. And so when I've seen issues for data science where there's a misalignment on that, you can't get that ROI, you can't get that buy-in. And so I think it'll make your expectations a lot easier too, both for yourself and for the company, knowing where they are in that data maturity cycle and then implementing within that space.
Yeah, that's the way this is going to evolve. Is just, I mean, it's so unknown. It's in a way, I was thinking about this the other day, that data, like the broad idea of data science is evolving itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at least in the last formal question I'll ask, then we'll go to the chat is, and Larry, I'll go with you on this one first. So I've been seeing this increased chatter recently that within the next 10 years, data scientists will be extinct. The role of data scientist will just be extinct. I think in part because of what you've both said in the past few minutes, or data scientists will be obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years. What are your thoughts on that issue? And as the career of data scientist going into the future, as data science does things to make itself evolve.
I think saying data scientist is a dying thing in about 10 years. I don't think it's going to die. I think the term data science, here, let me see if I can get data scientist is going to be more of a senior type of title because they're going to have the experience in all the fields, the machine learning ops, the data engineering, the data visualization, this data storytelling. I believe that will probably be more of a senior role because they'll understand the whole picture and help the team, the data team, get the answers and the return on investment for businesses. So I don't see it going away, maybe just the title change.
Mark?
I think at the end of the day, like, data is not going anywhere. It's basically the new oil, right? And it defines a lot of our processes and gives a huge competitive advantage for businesses. And I think the scale of data is going to increase with every single day. So I think auto ML and all those things, like I think that's the threat of like why data scientists may go away. I think the data scientists where you think you're just building models, I think that's quickly going away. I think data scientists are more so need to, someone I really love to follow on LinkedIn, his name's Vin. And he really talks about data science ROI, where how you're a data scientist that provides business value, not just building models. And so I think really diving into that scientist component of like setting up experiments to test business hypotheses with data. And sometimes that includes models, sometimes it doesn't. And it's really setting up a framework to understand how to take this data, understand what's happening, and then what's the action with this data to drive value and quantify that. And that's a really complex thing where I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Right, because the amount of data that's going to be generated is just going to continue to increase exponentially, probably. Maybe for good, maybe for bad. We'll see. So, Larry, did I ask you that question? Or did I go right to Mark? I forgot.
No, you asked me first. I was saying,
right.
I said that data science would be more of a senior role.
Yeah, that's right. So let's take a few questions here in the last little bit. And really, this is kind of a free-for-all. If anyone wants to take it, just let me know. I'll try to put them up on the bottom of the screen so you can see. So we'll go back to the perennial question. We don't want to hammer this into the ground because it never stops. And that is, should I learn Python or R programming or both, neither, or something else?
I got a good answer for this one. My favorite answer to explain this is you should learn the one that you need to solve the problem at hand. A lot of times I'm using Google Sheets or I'm using Corel Draw to make a chart. Very simple stuff. I would suggest maybe being familiar with both of them, but use the one that solves the problem at hand.
Okay. Mark?
In my current role, I use R and Python.
Go R.
If I'm doing a lot of statistics heavy stuff, that's more so not going into product. I'm writing R code. If I'm writing production level code, you can do that with R, but where at my current company, I'm using Python for that. So I have to wear both hats. I would actually say if you're stuck and want to choose one thing to probably provide the most value, I would actually choose SQL. And the reason being is that all your data science interviews are going to have a SQL question. So you're going to need to know it just to get the job. And then the second thing is once you become a data scientist, you don't get clean, nice data sets. They're in a mess of logic of databases and data warehouses. And, with the rise of cloud computing, data warehouses are becoming very cheap. And that's where you do use your SQL. So, that's Google BigQuery, AWS Athena. Those are the tools you're using to typically pull your data to use for your analyses, where you put into your Jupyter notebook or your R script or wherever it may be. And so I think that skill will just set you up to just hit the ground running when you do become a data scientist. Because more often than not, you're not going to be doing some crazy machine learning model for the most part. You're going to be spending hours trying to source the data, clean the data, and prepare it for your model.
Fighting with the data engineer. Hey, this isn't the right stuff I need.
Yeah.
Yeah, my answer is, should I learn Python or R programming or both? My answer is learn Stack Overflow. All right.
Yes.
Control C, Control V. That's it. Next question. We'll try to keep these moving along so we can answer as many as possible. Is it possible to learn data science for someone who maybe not be good at math or statistics? I think we talked about this a little bit before, but if someone does have a little bit of anxiety around math and stats, do you think, I think the answer is probably yes, but it might just take a little bit different path. So anyone want to chime in on this one?
Go ahead, Mark. You got this one.
Okay. I think the math, like linear algebra, I don't do that. I don't know that stuff. I know the basics. I know matrices, but for the current things I'm working on, does not require that. Stats, I use that a lot. And so with that said is, okay, that's not your strength. Lean into your current strength. So maybe you may not be the smartest math or stats person in the room, but man, you're good at visualization, or wow, you're really good at connecting to business needs or communicating to business stakeholders, right? And data science is a team sport. So you're gonna have to get to at least a threshold where you're good enough to do your work, but you don't need to be the best. Really find out what your strength is and really lean into that. So for me, I wasn't the strongest technical person for the longest time. That's slowly starting to change because I put a lot of time into it. But my strength was actually communication, really talking to business stakeholders and extracting what their needs were, and then building something around that. And so that's why I kind of leaned into first as I built up those technical skills.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And you hear people all the time just saying it's got to find the right thing, but just that just kind of lines up with, and then they can sort of go from there. All right. Next question on that topic. What tools do you use for visualization?
I'll take this one. I love this one. So I surprise a lot of people when I say my go-to one right now is Corel Draw. That's my baby. I'm not a Adobe Illustrator. I grew up on Corel Draw. That's where I do a lot of my visualization tools and put them into spreadsheets because I have a lot more power of the message I want to send. The other ones I use is usually Google Sheets, make a chart out of there that I need. ggplot is my programming baby. I love ggplot. So I make a lot out of them, but and Tableau, Power BI when I have to make a dashboard if it comes to it. But I don't really use those for visualizations. I use those more of a metric monitoring. If I'm telling a story, I want to make the story impact. So I'll make it a visualization, like an infographic on a slide that I have to present to somebody. That's how I use those tools.
Awesome. Mark?
I echo ggplot too is amazing. And then for Python, I use matplotlib and Seaborn. But my best visualization tools are actually MS Paint. And the reason I say it is because I do a lot of visualizations. I'm a big believer in design thinking and really iterating really fast. And so I'll get a request from a business stakeholder and I'll draw out like, hey, this is the graph I'm thinking about building based on your request. And I'll sketch out fake data with it. And that visualization is so powerful because I show it to them and they're like, oh, yeah, that's completely wrong. My assumption, this is what I really mean. And that just saved me like 10 hours of going down a wrong path. And so like, I don't scoff at the like non-technical tools. Like, Sheets are amazing. MS Paint is amazing for those things. And also like, if a visualization for a final product, if you can do it in 5 minutes in Sheets or 5 hours in ggplot, I'm going to do Sheets because that saves me time and it's going to have the same impact. And many times, a simpler solution is easier for the business stakeholder who may not be technical.
I completely agree. I've noticed, like, I've been at Cengage for about 7 years now. I've noticed that almost all the useful visualizations we use in our meetings and reports and stuff like that are just copy and paste from Excel or something very simple. It doesn't have to be something, and there are times for the other stuff. If you want to do like a workbook that's interactive and stuff like that. Yeah. Also, I've noticed that even if you make a big dashboard, like people don't know how to use it.
Oh yeah. I was just going to jump on that, say that a lot of these tools, they don't know how to use. So they see no value in it. They're like, oh, great. Where's the answer to my question?
Yeah. It's like, if I click on this column in the chart, all of a sudden everything else changes. And they're like, what happened? So anyway, Good. It's good stuff. So another question, what part of your jobs do you currently struggle with or need to learn more about
Hmm.
to work on? Maybe I would assume maybe current things you're doing, or to make just be a little bit better in your current jobs. And I'm not sure that necessarily has to be skills necessarily, right? It could be anything from being better in meetings to communicating this better or whatever. What's something you struggle with in your current positions?
Do you want to go first, Mark, or you want me to take it?
I can go first because it's been on my mind quite a bit. I think early in my career, this is kind of how I've broken down, is that you're given a task and you're told how to do that task. And the more work you do, the better. As you advance, you're given a task and you have to figure out how to complete that task. Again, more work you do. I'm now getting a stage in my career where I'm given business objectives and I need to determine what the task is to solve that and how to execute on that. And so there's a lot of freedom in that. And my thing I'm trying to learn now is, one, how do I prioritize what to work on when I can work on everything? And two, understanding the thing I work on, how does that drive large business impact? Not just I completed this report, but it changed this ROI, this key metric for these business stakeholders. And that's a new framework of thinking for me. And so now I'm leaning away from the technical textbooks, more business textbooks, so I can better come up with better ideas to how to implement in my data. And so I think that's the current challenge I'm really working on. And I think that's the key thing that really sets apart data scientists who are like, I'm into data, versus data scientists who I make millions of dollars for this company.
Yeah, and be able to show that return on what you do. Like you said earlier, it can be very hard to even tease that apart. Like if you implement something, like what is the back end result of that sort of change? And I think like documenting everything as well. And if we have more time, we go in more into that. But absolutely, and Larry, any thoughts on this question?
I would say probably the one struggle, probably not most people would really have, is in the freelance community. You're talking to people who think that just make an algorithm and solve it. I want it to sound like this. I struggle, and I'm thankful I have my wife because she's a great interpreter of nerd to common sense. So I struggle really hard explaining data and how it works and the reason for certain things. Yes, I can communicate, I can storytell, but when you're explaining to somebody who knows nothing of data, it's very difficult. So I'm still working on that. I have my wife with me to hold my hand to make sure I say the right words that the person can understand. So bless her heart, I don't know how she manages to do it. She's not a fan of data, but I probably now I know why, because she has to translate it all. But I do struggle a lot with explaining data concepts to people who think that data is just make an algorithm. Google did it kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like my role. Like what I see my role is doing is just being that sort of first bridge for people to get from here to there, but then on their way. Like I'm just like, you think of like I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and like there's just somewhere they cross a bridge. They have to get from that side to that side,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to go many miles from there. But if I can just be that little bridge, they get from there to there, fine. And usually that's translating something that's abstract into something that's a bit more concrete. So, do either you all have a hard stop
No,
right at
I'm
I
top of
don't.
the hour?
I'm
We'll go a few.
no,
We'll
I'm
go a
good.
few more minutes. We'll go a few more minutes. I want to make sure we get to people's questions. That's all. Um, so this question is very good. So people at times get too occupied with a particular part of the overall curriculum and lose their way. What is your advice on sort of the minimum basic requirements to become a data scientist? And I will add, knowing that by the time you think you've gotten there, it has already
It's
changed.
changed.
But like, is there a lot of schools now have data science undergraduate degrees, or analytics types degrees. So what would you advise people maybe, or think what sort of path people would take? Or another idea, this is sort of my own 2 cents on this question, because I could talk about this all day, is during undergrad to focus on some sort of domain, like go and study finance or study marketing or study public, policy, and kind of keep the data stuff in the back of your mind, and then go on like in a graduate degree, then really hit sort of the data hard. Now, some people may not agree with that, I know, but just a thought. What do you, who wants to take this one?
I can try to give it
Just
a
real
shot
quick.
on this one. I think I definitely agree that domain knowledge. When you're getting your first data role, it's really hard to convince people that you have the data skill to do it, and you probably don't because you don't have access to enterprise level data. And so the thing that got my foot in the door wasn't my data skills; it was my domain knowledge in healthcare that got me my first job, and also subsequent interviews when I was laid off and had to find other jobs. Right. Somehow I'm not in healthcare right now, so all worked out. But that was my foot in the door. It's like, hey, I may not be the best at SQL, I may not be the best at Python, but man, I understand your data type really, really well. And I can use that intuition to help guide others who are better at the data as I train up. And so definitely agree with that. But kind of like the bare minimum requirements is, I think just knowing how to use R or Python, just choose one. Don't get caught up on whichever one. Just knowing how to load in data, how to set up an experiment, run an experiment, and export the data, right? The second thing would be how to communicate data findings to lay people who don't understand that. And then the third thing is, what was I going to say? There's the data, there's domain knowledge. Well, for statistics wise, just have basic statistics sense. You don't need to go full causal inference, advanced methods. Just understand your distribution. What are your assumptions for various tests? How to do regression. That question is going to come up a lot of times as a basic weeder question for data science interviews. You can get really far with regression, to be honest. And I think that can just set you apart. Just knowing that really well, and the data and statistical sense around regression will be a strong foundation for other methods as you learn. So I think if you just start with those basic things first, and then as you interview or as you try to do other roles, you can see what things to build on. But I think that's like the solid foundation to get you started to learn anything.
Great. And Larry, I want to put the next question that's related. So it's not like
Sure.
a total different topic, and see if you can chime in. Jay, thank you for your great questions, by the way. You've had some great questions. So what type of learning do you recommend for quicker progress? Learning by doing a project, or taking a formal course, or studying with books? Of course, it has to be an or question. Doesn't have to be that either.
This is kind of a it depends question. I'm going to do the whole it depends. Depends on the kind of learner you are as somebody. I'm a very visual audio. I have to be taught, shown how to do it. Once I see it, I have to practice it over and over to understand it. So my learning is very, very slow. I use books to grab new concept, new ideas, but to apply them, I would have to use some kind of practice coding. I use YouTube videos for those to solve the problems, like I said earlier. But for formal courses, like I said earlier, I did some of the data quests and data camp. They didn't solve the problem I was looking for. And to jump on what Mark was saying, I find it more important that I know the industry that I'm in, the type of data I'm working with, much more valuable than I do knowing how to run a certain R code. Because if I don't understand the data and what kind of input they're doing, like I do a lot of marketing stuff. I need to know about ACoS, row cost, impressions, clicks. I need to know what that stuff is because I need to be able to explain it. And I will only find that stuff out is if I learn it from a book or somebody teach it to me. So I'm not going to get that from an R course, or, well, maybe Matt Dancho's possibly. I haven't taken that one, but I've seen a lot of people come out of that one pretty good. But the domain authority, I would really think, is where I would focus most of my stuff on, because the data stuff you can pick up as you go. You'll go to YouTube and figure, like you said, Stack Overflow. Yeah, I'm there all the time in GitHub.
Yep. Any quick thought on this, Mark, before we go to the next question, which is a very different question I want to put up because it's not related to what we've been talking about, but I think it's important. So any thoughts on this?
I would just add one more thing is if you do want to go more on the technical side, learning how to write production level Python code that's clean and easy to organize. I found now that I'm getting more technical is that it makes my code a lot easier to work with and understand and debug. And that goes a long way, especially when you're coming back 6 months from a project and like, what was I doing? Or if you're building on top of it. And I think that learning those skills, like I self-taught Python, I learned a lot of bad habits. I'm really relearning how to not do now that I have to like put code into production. And so I think learning that, not maybe first, that maybe that's more of a second priority, but I think that's like the next jump that can help your code and your work.
Awesome. This question I really like. I think a lot of people face these things. So Shivani's asking, I have a long way to reach data science, but even in my current job, I tend to get all messed up and end up in hypertension. How do you handle the pressure in these fields?
I go running. I break my day up and I go running, and yep, that's pretty much how I alleviate stress, just so I don't yell. I know that's not helpful, but that's kind of what I do. It's great to clear your mind, and you'll sit at the computer. I've been guilty. I'm sure Mark has been guilty at this for hours and hours. And you're like, I give up. And then you go away for 10 minutes. You're like, you know what? Did I put a semicolon where I needed to? And you go back and you're like, oh man, 12 hours gone from that stupid semicolon. So I would say take a break and do something to blow steam off.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts, Mark? I have some thoughts. You first.
I think the biggest thing I'm learning now is learning how to set boundaries and say no to things and prioritize. I still do it, but say yes to everything, every single data request, every single data pull. And now, like I'm as my mentors are really telling me, like, Mark, you gotta be more business focused, thinking, does this drive the needle forward for making positive change in my company? Yes or no? And is this urgent? Many times, most things of your requests are not in that list. And so learning how to prioritize will cut down the stress initially, but you're still gonna be stressed with your current work. And so something I use is mindfulness, really being in the present, breathing, meditation. I go off and on it, but I definitely jump back on it when I notice I'm way, way too stressed. And I think that really helps me. And I think the thing that makes me notice is that when I'm stepping away from work and when I use mindfulness to check in on myself, be in the present, I realize I'm always thinking about work when I'm done. And so learning how to shut that off gives you the space to relax and recharge and have those moments where like, oh, the semicolon.
Yeah.
Gotta hate those semicolons.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I don't want to, I don't know everyone's situation, obviously, but it's if you're doing something or in a position that's causing you hypertension and physical symptoms, it's really time to rethink sort of the way you're approaching things, how, what the priority is and stuff like that, because nothing's more important than your life. And whether it's exercise or meditation or just doing something you think is fun to have something off on the side. But yeah, I mean, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, without them, you're not going to be of asset to anyone probably, and actually probably a detriment. So it's just finding that balance, and there is another related question, I think, which I think gets to the heart of this. It's really the first tip of this. The first part of this, I think, is really good. It's all good, but this is a good question. How do you prove that you can deliver value now that the market is becoming saturated with people who have studied and currently study data science? We're all on LinkedIn. We see it constantly. Individuals who have a ton of educational experience, a lot of times actually job experience, looking for roles that you think they should be able to walk into because of the experience and stuff that they have done. You look, it's like, wow, man, this person's done a lot. I mean, well, one is that is the assumption true that data science field is becoming saturated? Number one. Number two, if that is true, how do people stand out in that saturated field? So either one of you have thoughts. I could just call on somebody, but does
I'll
anyone
go.
have any
I'll go.
thoughts?
I'll go. I got.
Yeah. Can
First,
can I add a quick question just
Yeah.
for Larry for this? Is also like, because you're doing freelance and you're doing entrepreneurship, like what does that look like from the business lens as well? Because I'm very curious for that background of you.
Good question.
yeah, that's. I'm glad you asked because that's how I was going to present it. To go with the first part about it being saturated, I don't feel it's being saturated. I think it's being more competitive, just like anything else out there. People see these skill sets they're needed. It's just becoming competitive. The trick is to find a specialty and where you can deliver the most value. There's a great video that I watch. I'm a designer by heart, so I watch a lot of this channel. It's called, can I put a shameless plug in for this guy?
No, go ahead.
Oh, it's called The Future, Chris Do. He does a great job explaining how to present value to the type of client. He explains why Nike will pay $5 million for a logo, whereas mom and pop shop will give you a free sandwich for a logo. The way I present that I deliver value is I try to figure out their problem, how much it costs them, and what I can do to save them money. And then from there, I kind of take what I charge within that value that I've saved them. It's not a guarantee, but I'm confident enough in my skills that I can save them that much in value and provide that much value. So it's all about how I deliver the solving their business problem and the value it's going to save them. Does that make sense? I hope I answered that in a decent way.
Yeah. You know, it's when these things, and Mark, on everyone you chime in on this, and then we'll wrap up here in a couple of minutes, is that when these things get hot, there's this big flood into programs. You know, and I work with professors every day in my day job. I know them very well. And like their business analytics programs and stuff like that had over the past like 5-10 years just exploded. Like, I mean, just massive enrollment increases in these programs. Then of course people get out of the programs everywhere, and there are only so many positions to go around. And then the people that came before them are creating systems and things like that actually automate part of the process. That's why I said about data science evolving itself. And then a lot of people left without chairs when the music stops. And, you know, how do we get around that? But Mark, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a huge influx of people being trained, but many times I feel like the training is does not kind of map to the real job. There's a lot of stuff in machine learning and all these different advanced kind of stats things that really don't go into production that often, or if they do, it's at a very mature company. And so I think something you can do to set yourself apart is, I think going back to my earlier statement, is understanding the places you're applying to. And this comes from a employee perspective. Identify where they are in that life cycle, do your research on the company and what their needs and pain points are. And then you can't just apply blindly to places. You need to be very strategic. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn's really leveled the playing field, changed the game really for me, where you can have anyone in your network. You just have to find them. And so you need to find the decision makers who are hiring managers or the recruiters for companies you're interested in, and target them and say, like, don't have the framework of like, hey, I'm trying to get this job. It's more so, I am this person with this expertise, this skill set that I've been trained in. And I think I can apply it to your company in XYZ way to really make a change and drive value. And so I think that changes the dynamic of the conversation, where now you're talking not about what skill sets do you have, but more so what's the problem of the company and what's the value you can drive. And that's important on both ends, because you want to put yourself in a position where you're set up for success and you have the skill set and you'll be happy in it, but also for the company to be aware of like what they're getting from this. So I think, you know, being very focused on value that you can provide as an employee when you are applying for jobs, when there is a huge market. Because for the most part, a lot of people are learning the data science, but not that many people are doing the work to give targeted applications, and doing kind of a less volume applications, but very high quality and targeted ones. And I found that when I switched to that format for applying for jobs as a data scientist, especially for my first one, I started getting callbacks because it was very targeted to the decision makers.
Oh, can I
That's
jump
great.
on that? Jump on
Yes.
his thing. For those looking, when you're looking for a job, you're speaking to business professionals, unless maybe you're going with one of the big companies like Google, Amazon, or something like that have like a huge team. But majority of the time, these companies, they read in dollar amounts. They need to know how much money you're going to return back on them. If they give you 100,000 a year, you should be able to provide, I'm worth that 100,000 because I'm going to give your company an extra 500,000 with the work I'm going to do. If you pitch it to that way, like Mark said, you would be surprised at how many people will sit down and want to speak with you. Telling them you can code in R, that's great. They can go find that from somebody else. Tell them you can make a dashboard, that's great. But if you can show them how much money you can save them or bring back to the company, they will perk up and they will listen, and you can do a presentation on it anytime you want. Sorry, I had to get on that one. I just wanted to emphasize that.
That's a great point. You should know your value, right? And the
Yeah.
last sort of topic I want to talk about is actually something you've both just brought up, and then I'm going to have you both just give some final thoughts, on these issues, and then we'll go ahead and end the stream. So we interact on LinkedIn. We're all active on LinkedIn, and that's the social network I've chosen. Like, I deleted my Facebook, one of the best things I ever did personally. Deleted my Instagram, deleted my Twitter. I got off all that stuff. Now, that's a personal decision I made. It's made my life exponentially better. I mean, my mental health is a lot better. My relationships are a lot better. I've lost like 72 pounds because my mental health is better. I'm exercising. I'm not on my phone all the time. I'm just a healthier person overall. And part of that's because I got off those things. So I focused on LinkedIn. That's like my one place to focus. So on since we're all active there, how would you advise the viewers to utilize LinkedIn in order to, further their career, to make connections, maybe pick their boss, to express their value? And actually, I'm going to go to Mark on this first. I know he just did a post where he was talking about how he might make some changes on how he interacts on LinkedIn and some different content ideas. So how can we leverage that as professionals and learners and all that? Mark, thoughts?
I think you have to make a decision. Do you want to be a content creator where you're creating community, where you're creating spaces to have these conversations, or do you want to be the individual that engages in those conversations, or do both? And so I think a great first step, if you're getting on LinkedIn, is find who the influencers are. They might have the LinkedIn top voice 2020 of this space, right? Find those people, the people who post every single day, and just follow them, and just add really engaging comments, engaging with them. It's a win-win for everyone, because when you comment, it provides more visibility of their post as they're trying to build a community. But also, you'll see other people in the same space commenting back to you, or the person who created the posts respond back to you, and you start building rapport in the community, where now you're having conversations with these people who are really advanced, who can essentially are mentoring you at scale via LinkedIn or through these videos. I think as well. I mean, I watched Brandon's videos 3 years ago when I was struggling with stats, and I was just commenting on his posts and tagging him. And now I'm here, which is wild to me. And it was just because I was so passionate about the subject. I was engaging in the community. So that's a great way to start connecting and building people. And then if you feel so that like you actually want to start putting out content, then I think the thing I always ask myself, and the reason I started on LinkedIn is because I was laid off. And rather than putting out job applications, I instead said every single day, I'm going to make a LinkedIn post that provides value to people, and essentially is a lead generator. It will connect me to inbound leads for recruiters. And it worked. That's how I got my job at Humu. And then I just kind of kept on going with it. And so don't just share content like, oh, this is cool, but like actually be thoughtful of like, this is what I learned and this is how you can apply it. Because there may be people more advanced than you who are just like, oh, wow, yeah, I remember that. Here's some advice. Or there may be people who are a few steps behind you. They're like, oh, wow, I'm working on that right now. Thanks for sharing. And so I think that's a really great start. Comment other people's who already has a community developed. And then if you do want to start building your own communities, think about how does this post drive value for at least one person?
Yes. Use the network effect. Absolutely. Larry, any thoughts?
Yes, I do want to type into those who are thinking maybe going more into the freelance or gig economy on data science. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. As Mark was saying, get in these communities, but getting in the communities of the data professionals is a good idea. But if you want to go freelance, you have to get in front of the people that you want to freelance for. So it becomes a little bit more trickier. Now you're juggling two types of audiences, I would say, to target. So marketing toward businesses about a service of why value you can provide them is going to be a little bit more different than it is when you're in the data community, which, by the way, if you join the data community, is probably one of the nicest communities out there. I've tried a Python community. Those guys are not very nice. On the coders in general are kind of not the nicest people. They always tell you to go to Google or leave them alone. But the data community in general is a very friendly, opening, welcoming type of community. So they love to help solve problems with you.
Yeah. I always tell everyone who's thinking about this should start their own business.
Yes.
Like, and I don't mean like do it full time, but I mean, go to whatever, in the US at least, go to whatever state you're in, or you can actually make a business in another state. Just, make like a simple LLC or something like that, do the business paperwork, and that will allow you to do side work or whatever else. Set up a business account, bank account, that will set you up to be able to do side work with your own clients or whatever else, in its own compartment. It's its own sort of entity. So my YouTube, and I have another job that I do. I have 3 jobs. Those
life
two,
of the entrepreneur.
Yeah, those 2 other jobs, besides my full-time job, are actually underneath the umbrella of the LLC. And sometimes I had a brand deal once that I put underneath there. So everyone, they're usually not that expensive. I mean, a few $100 is not nothing, but it's not like crazy to form your own single person business at first, so you can do these other things. And at least in the US, you can write that stuff off on your taxes as business expenses. So you're not just pumping out money into something. You can actually run it as a business. That's my 2 cents on it. But
can I chime in on that? Can I chime in on that one?
Sure.
For those thinking about it, I would highly recommend do not do it as a sole proprietor, because if you're thinking about doing it as a freelance, kind of one, I have to say this, contact a lawyer to help you out. But 2, do a framework to protect you, because there are clients that if you do something wrong and they want to file a lawsuit against you, if you don't have that protection, like an LLC, to stop them from going, they can take all of your assets, your house, your car, and they will.
Yes, that's correct. That's why I said LLC. That's absolutely correct. You want to have your business stuff in its own compartment to have, it's called limited liability.
Yeah.
Corporation for a reason, to protect yourself if you do sort of freelance work. And yes, we are not attorneys, fine print. We're not lawyers or anything like that, but there's just some advice that I've picked up along the way. That's what I've done myself, So what I want to do now, because we've gone a bit longer than I thought, is give each of you maybe a minute or so to come up with any sort of concluding thoughts. The title of this show was, classroom to career. And if there's anything maybe we have not covered, or something you may have thought of along the way, or whatever else that you might like to get across to our current viewers and our replay viewers, on that sort of topic of what to do. And since Larry went first when we started, I'm going to put Mark on the spot. And at the conclusion, I'm going to make him go first. So any last thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, it's a journey. And to remember that, and it's sometimes a really hard journey. And I think just be patient and grow with it. I think I on my LinkedIn post about this live stream, this is such a full circle thing for me, because literally my first stats class in grad school, where I was struggling. I was in an advanced regression course and I didn't even know what regression was. And I was freaking out. I pulled up Brandon's YouTube videos without even knowing, and he said, "Breathe," right? And like, I got this. I needed to hear that in that moment, and that calmed me down, and it got me up to speed to actually pass that course. Basically, if I didn't pass that course, I couldn't take any other stats classes, and that kind of closed the book for data science for me. And so you're gonna have struggles, but if you just stay calm and just work through it and stay consistent, you'll build the skills over time, and you'll meet other people who can help you along the way, to get to that point when you finally do become a data professional, there's data analyst, data scientist, data engineer. And so I think that's the key thing is like consistency and breathing, staying calm, because it will be hard. But that's all part of the journey, and eventually you'll push through and you'll have another challenge you have to work on. And so as long as you love that process, your time as a data scientist or data professional will be amazing.
Yeah, and that's, Larry, I'll let you go in a second, but it's like you're not alone. There are like-minded people out there that can help, you can work with, and stuff like that. So don't feel like you're an island all by yourself when you get, stressed out and stuff like that. And I appreciate your very, very kind words, of course. But I think I just tell people on my channel that you're not alone. You can just take a breath, deep breath, step back. We can do this, and just go forward one step at a time. Just go forward, and then you can go faster as you go. So, Larry, final thoughts? Then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I do want to say, for those getting out of the training and looking for a job, I would like to add on maybe some tips that might help them. You do see on LinkedIn, or I get a lot of messages. How do I get a job? I did this Kaggle thing. I did this. To me, the first response I would give them is say, go find a business on one of these forums or LinkedIn, see what kind of problem they have, and see if you can solve it and get actual real world problem solving skills. Those will help build a portfolio that outshines others who come there and say, I played with the Titanic data set, or I went on Kaggle and got a data set. If you go and find a small business and you can help solve a simple problem, I promise you, recruiters will be like, ooh, how much did you save these people money? Again, they want to know about dollar amount. You can't really convey dollar amount with a Kaggle data. Well, I guess you could, but they'll know where it came from, or the Titanic one. I would suggest maybe reaching out to a business that might have a problem that you believe you can solve, and try and help them to get that portfolio build up. So when you do go and apply for a position at a company, you can say, I help this person solve this problem by doing this. You will stand out a lot more than the competition, I guess, out there.
Yeah, and like this, the final thought I'll have with the two of you here is that's how I actually got into YouTube. Like, some people know that story, and I'll probably tell it more in another live stream I'm going to be on here soon. But it's like, during the Great Recession, I was working on my PhD. The bottom fell out of everything. There was no money. There was no nothing. Academia was kind of like, ugh, to me anyway. I was 35 years old in my parents' basement. I was in very poor health, wasn't taking care of myself, and I was really depressed. And I was like, you know what? I have a computer, I have the internet, and YouTube is free. Let's try it. That's when it started 9 years ago. So I solved a problem that was out there that I thought I could teach this stuff in a way that my mind sort of processed this. And my background's all in education. Like, I just did this out of my, rear end. My whole, everything I've studied and done is about education. So it wasn't like new to me, but it just came out of that. But to your point, that led to not one, but two full-time positions, because both recruiters found the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And You know, led my first full-time job out of that very despair place, and then my current role I've been in for over 7 years. And we've just blown out of the water there. We have an amazing team and an amazing group of people we work with, but it's led to 2 positions because in that sense, I was solving the problem of education that I saw. So and there was evidence of it. I mean, there's no more evidence than putting your YouTube videos up. I know.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
if they are crap, people will tell you. Like, that's right. That's your portfolio right there, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, just find the problem you're going to solve and have some evidence of that. And you will get on the radar of individuals in some way, you know, but it is crowded. It's a lot more crowded now than it was when I did this 9 years ago. You know, it's going to keep getting more and more crowded, and stuff like that. So, well, we've gone an hour and a half, which is half an hour more than I thought we probably could go even longer. But I want to respect everyone's time. And I think I told Mark this earlier. As soon as I sign off here, I'm building a new PC from scratch. It's my 10-year. I build a new one every 10 years. So I'm going to be disconnecting everything and building a new PC. It's going to be PC day for me. So I'm excited. But I respect everyone's time. But I want to thank you both for coming on. It means a lot to me that you agreed to come on relatively short notice to talk about this and be a resource to students out there that are really kind of making this transition or maybe have recently. And maybe we can do this again, some other time and follow up. So thank you both. And I wish you all, you both a great weekend, and I'll be in touch, on the LinkedIn machine here sometime very soon. So thank you guys very much.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. Thank you. You've been an inspiration. I'm sure I can say this for everybody, to all of us. It's quite the honor to be on your show. I'm not going to lie. When I close this, I'm going to be doing the happy dance.
Oh. Same. I honestly couldn't sleep last night. I was so excited. So this is
okay. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just me.
Like the honor is all mine. It really is. So thank you again. You all can close out your things whenever you want to. I'll say a few things, and then I'm going to get on with my Guinness and my computer. So see you guys later. Take care. All right, everybody. So that was our show today. That went really well. So thank you all for staying around. I hope that you found that useful for whatever purposes you have. And then I want to keep this conversation going, though. This isn't like where it's going to stop here and not talk about it again. So of course you can reach any 3 of us on LinkedIn. Larry and me and Larry and Mark are very open on LinkedIn. You can contact us and it's a question, a DM, whatever. Of course, you can contact me on YouTube. My website, you can contact me. You can check out their respective websites. So Analytics and then Humu, which I had up on the screen before. So we'll keep this conversation going. We'll revisit this in the future, but let me know how we can use this to benefit you. That's what the goal of this is. So I'm going to get on with my day, and I appreciate your very valuable time, and I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.